The anime tells the story of high school student named Seiichi Haragi, who's often bullied by his friends because of his body odor. For this reason, they nickname him as Pig. One day during a break, Seiichi was laying on the floor while his classmates were talking, when suddenly they receive an unusual announcement who claims that he is a god, and he will transport the entire class to a fantasy world. He then gives everyone the ability to check their status and skills. He tells them to form groups before they are sent to another world to fight the Demon Lord. Seiichi tries to find a group, but is rejected by everyone because of his low stats. Soon after, everyone is teleported, but Seiichi gets separated from the rest of his class. Seiichi is transferred alone to a different region. Away from his classmates, he finds himself in a forest. Just as he begins to give up hope of survival, he suddenly sees a strange-looking fruit on the ground in front of him. Seiichi ends up eating this fruit without thinking too much about it. Feeling re-energized, Seiichi goes looking for food again. After looking for some time, he finds a group of gorillas collecting and gathering evolution fruit. He steals the fruit and eats all of them, and takes some healing potions, putting them inside his item box while the gorillas are away. Meanwhile, his classmates arrive at a school at a courtyard. We switch back to Seiichi, who is suddenly attacked by the group of gorillas who'd been gathering evolution fruit. All of the gorillas, enraged at his theft, attack him due to his low stats. Seiichi is unable to defeat the gorillas. He's knocked unconscious from their beating and fell down. But as the gorillas tried to eat him, he farts, killing the gorillas. After defeating the gorillas, Seiichi gets new items, food, and skills. After some time, his body undergoes a metamorphosis that makes him fit and handsome. His overall stats get raised higher, but his overall level remains at level 1. After 5 months of defeating enemies and surviving alone, Seiichi is attacked by a Saria, a gorilla-like female monster. Seiichi manages to survive her attack with minor damage. Saria is impressed by his strength because this is the first time anyone has ever survived an attack from her. She falls in love with him after witnessing his strength in battle. Saria then proposes to him and says that she wants to be his wife. Seiichi refuses the invitation and is disgusted by her and rejects her affection. Saria does everything for Seiichi, including cooking and making clothes for him as his sole bride. Seiichi grows increasingly uncomfortable around Saria because of her actions, and decides to run away from Saria's place. Seiichi escapes and finds a mysterious cave. Saria, who is tailing Seiichi from behind, tries to warn him not to enter the cave, but it doesn't work. After getting inside the cave, Seiichi meets a skull monster named Cyanos, who is way stronger than Seiichi thought. Just when Cyanos is about to stab Seiichi with his sword, Saria jumps in and sacrifices herself to save him. After getting stabbed, Saria dies after expressing her love to Seiichi. He then feels regret for treating her so poorly. Seiichi avenges Saria by defeating and killing Cyanos. Seiichi cries for Saria's death and kisses her. A light then appears and Saria returns to life, transformed into a gorgeous red-haired girl. Moments pass and Seiichi undergoes his final evolution and becomes much cooler than ever before. A sheep named Edward appears and says that Seiichi is the first person to complete the dungeon quest, and they will be rewarded from Edward, then they leave the dungeon. Meanwhile, in another part of the world, the other students inside the hall start learning how to use swords to protect themselves, since they will face battles soon. Shortly after, they face a high-level bubble monster, but Seiichi easily defeats it. Seiichi gets more items and skills from killing the monster. He receives a cloak which masks his power from others. After continuing traveling, Seiichi and Saria reach Tilbert, royal capital of Wimberg, hoping to join the local adventurers guild and gain official IDs. After arriving at the guild, he is astonished to see that it is filled with crazy people. In the guild, they meet a weird and violent girl named Elise, who's also the receptionist of the guild. Because of Saria's support, Seiichi couldn't say no and joins the guild. A skill test has to be done on Saria and Seiichi, which will be conducted by a white-haired girl named Artoria. In the first test, Saria is appointed to take care of children in an orphanage, while Seiichi's test is to destroy the ruins of an old building with Artoria. During the mission, Artoria reveals that she is nicknamed the Bringer of Disaster because she has a curse which brings bad luck to everyone around her. Because of this, she spent most of her life alone. The whole building collapses on Seiichi. Meanwhile, there was no visible progress on the other students, who'd been practicing swordsmanship for 5 months. Their trainer is disappointed with the training results and low levels, which makes them an easy target. On the next test, Seiichi is tasked with helping with the demolition of a local building and walking a noblewoman's dog. The giant dog is not a dog, but actually a giant wolf, and Seiichi runs away from him with their tasks completed. Seiichi and Seiya are officially welcomed into the guild. On the next day, Seiichi and Seiya continue their tests under Artoria's supervision, until Seiichi comes across a trio of demons setting up teleportation portals leading to the dungeon inhabited by the Black Dragon God. Artoria steps on a magical portal, accidentally teleporting them all to a castle, which contains a massive labyrinth. Artoria steps on a stone that causes a huge wall trap that separates her from Seiichi and Seiya, forcing her to find a way to meet up with them. A mummy then attacks Artoria. She defeats the monster and continues looking for Seiichi and Seiya. Meanwhile, Seiichi and Seiya look for ways to reach Artoria. After some time, they find a magical, walking and talking chest that tries to get them to open it. In frustration, the magical chest attacks them. Seiichi immediately uses his binding magic to kill it. After defeating the chest, Seiichi receives even more new skills and items. After a long walk, Artoria finds a room where she encounters a black dragon that just happens to be the dungeon lord. The room's door closes behind her after she walks in, trapping her with the dragon. Even after using her ultimate power, it doesn't even faze the dragon, and she is stabbed by him. The dragon then tries to finish her with its flames, but Seiichi and Seiya arrive just in time to save Artoria by using his protective cloak. Seiichi then instructs Seiya to look after Artoria while he focuses on fighting the Black Dragon God. Seiichi is thrown multiple times by the Black Dragon God while fighting, but after a long battle, he manages to defeat the Dragon God. After defeating the dragon, Seiichi levels up even further and gets some more rare items and acquires the power Spatial Magic, which he uses to take his friends back to the guild. Seiya and Seiichi finally return to the city to meet their guild members. She then tells them the story of how she became known as the Calamity. She was born with 2 million points of bad luck, causing her to bring misfortune to everyone she came across. Fortunately, Seiichi gives her a special ring he found back in the dungeon. The ring nullifies the curse that she has. Artoria thinks Seiichi has just proposed to her, and she runs away in embarrassment. Meanwhile, news of the Black Dragon God's death reaches the remaining leaders of the Demon Lord's army, causing them to worry that someone is trying to restart another war between humans and demons. The next day, Seiichi starts collecting information to try and find his classmates. Elise and Gussel give him some advice. Gussel then gave him a map of the city library and advised him to look in there, and Seiichi goes to the Royal Library of Tilbert. When that fails, he attempts to read books about magic and accidentally increases his magic power. After reading some books in the library, he realizes that most of the skills that he has earned now are very valuable. In the afternoon, Seiichi leaves the library and starts looking for food. After following the scent, he reaches a cafe run by an old man named Noard and a commoner known simply as Rans. He admits to them that he feels guilty because he just put Artoria in a difficult position. Noard and Rans advise him to be honest with Artoria and set things right with her. Meanwhile, Artoria gets advised by her friend Adriana to admit her feelings for Seiichi. Upon meeting yet again, Artoria admits she is in love with Seiichi, even though he is already in love with Seiya, who agrees to share Seiichi with Artoria. The decision is met with unanimous approval from their friends. Seiichi has now become an A-rank adventurer, and on the advice of Gussel, decides to buy a horse. Gussel hands Seiichi a map of a shop where he would be able to find horses. The stable owner shows Seiichi all the horses that he has in his stable, but Seiichi doesn't like what he showed him, until finally Seiichi notices a red temperamental female donkey named Lulun and agrees to buy her. He brings her home with him. While walking home, Seiichi and Lulun are met with Mei and Clay. Seiichi promises to finish first in the Royal Cup, and if he does, Mei will have to enter the art competition Clay was talking about. On the day of the horse race, Seiya and Artoria cheer on Seiichi and Lulun together. Lulun was aiming for 5th place of the race because the prize for 5th place is the most delicious fish named Tambuli. After eating the fruit of evolution from Seiichi, Lulun becomes so energetic that she races on to victory, finishing in 1st place. Lulun becomes upset after not getting the fish as a prize. Seiichi comforts her, which calms her down. Unbelievably, Lulun then transforms into a beautiful girl. Artoria becomes jealous and punches Seiichi for bringing another girl into the mix. But after Saria explains everything to Artoria about how Fruit of Evolution works, Artoria understands. Two of the Valkyries from the Wimberg Kingdom, named Lorna and Claudia, come and arrest Seiichi, and he is taken to Archel, the royal castle of Wimberg. Meanwhile, after arriving at the Wimberg Kingdom, Seiichi is asked to practice fighting with the Wimberg royal princess, named Louise Blaze. Louise attacks Seiichi suddenly, but he dodges the attack anyway. Louise is impressed with Seiichi and appoints him the title Master. The king of Wimberg is then suddenly attacked by an assassin, but the Valkyries quickly move in to stop her. But Seiichi uses his magic to discover that the assassin is only a little girl named Oliga Calmeria. He then leaves her to be interrogated by the Valkyries. Meanwhile, Seiichi's classmates are transferred to Barbador Magical Academy, and the Demon Nation's governing council, led by Lucia, the Demon Lord's daughter, agrees to negotiate for peace with Wimberg, much to the frustration of Lucia's advisor, Creus, who wants to wage war against the humans. Seiichi was surprised to see the king, since he was the same man, Rans, he met at the restaurant some days ago. Seiichi heals the king of Wimberg, who's been cursed by Oliga's knife. However, the king is still in critical condition due to Oliga's curse, and Seiichi is only able to save his life by creating his own healing spell. Florio Blaze, leader of Wimberg's magic division, and Louise's brother, thanked him for healing the king. As a reward, Reigns allows Seiichi to practice his fighting and magic skills freely in the castle. Meanwhile, Zekia, the old soldier who trained Seiichi's classmates in combat, questions the Kaiser Emperor's decision to send them to Barbador Magical Academy, and is horrified to learn that Helio, a mage working for the Emperor, placed bracelets on the students to prevent them from becoming a threat to the kingdom. Seiichi and Louise watch the interrogation of Oliga at the hands of Lorna. They stop the interrogation when they discover that Oliga is wearing a slave collar that forces her to obey the orders of the Kaiser Kingdom. Seiichi is able to release her from the collar by creating his own liberation spell, Creation Skill. Louise asks Seiichi to look after Reigns while she's investigating the activity of monsters near the border of Wimberg. Meanwhile, Zekia confronts the man who tried to assassinate the Kaiser Emperor, an archer known as Cheyenne. Disgusted by the death of his lost love, Cheyenne desires revenge against the Kaiser Empire for their oppressive discrimination against demons. Unable to bear the suffering of her people any longer, Zekia is forced to reevaluate his loyalty to the kingdom. Seiichi remains in the kingdom and continues practicing his magic skills. After some time, he manages to master his magic skills. Archel receives a visit from Barnabas, a legendary wizard who served as mentor to Rans. He then informs Rans about the students who recently transferred to the school, Barbador Magical Academy. Seiichi realizes that those new students are his classmates from Japan. As Louise's Valkyries join forces with Wimberg's finest soldiers to repel the attacking monsters, Rans was informed that an army of monsters has forced their way through Tilbert. They were moving on to the next location, and he needed to gather his troops to stand against them. A coalition of forces, including local adventurers and soldiers, is put together to defend Tilbert. They managed to hold the line against the first wave of demon brigades. Unfortunately, reinforcements for the demon army arrive, leaving the defenders with no means of escape. Saria, Artoria, Lulun, Florio, Gussel, Elise, and the Grand Magician Barnabas join the whole fight along with the other soldiers. Seiichi creates an ultimate offensive spell called Judgment that obliterates the enemy army, while leaving the defenders of Tilbert unharmed. Impressed by Seiichi's talent, Barnabas, welcoming him as the city's savior, offers Seiichi an apprenticeship at Barbador. Seiichi accepts on the condition of waiting until Louise and her Valkyries return to Tilbert to ensure Rans' safety. Princess Louise returns from the border. Seiichi and his companions are ready to head to the Barbador Academy. They bid farewell to all the guild members and all the people from Wimberg Kingdom, but promise to return. Meanwhile, Creus is disappointed to learn that the demon army failed to destroy Tilbert. This failure earns him the anger of the Demon Lord, who is hoping to use the negative emotions unleashed by the destruction of the city to resurrect himself. However, the Demon Lord only considers this a temporary setback and swears to find another way to regain his power. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Turn on notifications for new videos. Take care.